Welcome to this tutorial video. In today's session, as you can see, we'll be looking at what we call learning. Before we continue with this particular video, please remember to subscribe so that you have access to those upcoming videos. Now let's begin. So this topic that I'm going to be teaching you today, I should specify that it's particularly for those that are doing the following programs: Bachelor of Science in Nursing, Bachelor of Science in Midwifery, Bachelor of Science in Public Health Nursing, or Mental Health Nursing. So you understand that in your final years, because I don't know if your schools goes up to 4th year or 5th year, but practically speaking, in your final years, you get to have what we call nursing education. Now, this is a course that helps you to become what we call a nursing educator. It simply means that you will be such an individual that will be able to teach your fellow nursing students. Okay? So, nursing education, of course, like I've said, is a course that you find in final year, and then it also helps you to do what we call, or to go about what we call teaching practice. So before you go for teaching practice, you find that you have to be, oriented to certain topics that will make you a better tutor or a better teacher as you go to your various respective teaching practice, allocations. So let's begin. So learning, just by the term itself, learning. Right now, actually, as you are listening to my tutorial video, you are actually learning. Then what is this learning? Why is it that you must know about learning? See, if you're supposed to be a good tutor, you need to understand how a student learns. You need to understand how a student acquires information. That's why they will be able to teach you this topic so that you are familiar with how learning takes place. So, to start with, let me show you this particular picture. So in this particular picture, you can see that there is this tutor here, or this teacher in front. She's pointing at something. As she's pointing at something, she wants the students to also to respond. As you can see, there's this student here, he's raising his hand. She's also raising her hand. Then there's also this student here paying attention. So if you are talking about a learning environment, you can see that it's such a one that is involving students. So as you go for a teaching practice, you should know that it's never about you, but it's also about students being involved in the classroom session. She's pointing at something, students are paying attention. As a BSc nurse or a BSc midwife, you come to understand that you are involving the sensory inputs from these students to be able to learn. They are seeing what is on the board. You are pointing at that. You can see that even their physical, psychomotor emotions are being involved. So you should know that for learning to take place, you have to involve sensory organs, such as hearing, okay, seeing, okay, those kind of stuffs. Let's begin with also what we call the introduction on this particular part. So we're saying that in the introduction, we're saying that learning is a complex process that is influenced by various characteristics and the principles. So for learning to take place, there are certain principles and features that must be able to develop it. It doesn't just happen like out of the blue, no. Even as you are listening to me here, there are certain principles I'm putting into consideration so that you are able to understand what I'm telling you or what I'm teaching you. So in this particular session, as you can see, we'll be able to look at the features and the principles as we make progress. We are also saying that learning shapes how individuals acquire, retain, and apply knowledge and skills. So this learning we're talking about, as a student learns from you, they'll be able to acquire that knowledge that we're teaching them. They'll be able to retain it or remember it, and indeed, they'll find a way of applying it. So we're saying that learning shapes how individuals acquire, retain, and apply knowledge as well as what? As well as skills. The general objective of this particular tutorial video is that at the end of this particular video, you should be able to gain knowledge or understanding on what? On the learning topic. And then the specific objectives are that number one, we should be able to define what learning is. Number two, we're going to explain the characteristics of learning. What is it that defines a learning environment? And then we also look at what we call the principles of learning. Like I said, learning doesn't just happen. There are certain principles that we must put in consideration for learning to take place effectively. Let's start with a definition. Okay, so if I was to ask you, how would you define learning in your own terms? From the time you were in primary school up to this particular point, you've been learning. So if I was to ask you, how would you define learning in your own terms? Pause the video and ask yourself that question on the definition that you can come up with. My definition here is very simple and straightforward. We're saying that learning is a process of acquiring knowledge, skills, and values that results in change in what? In behavior or change of behavior. So, learning is a process, number one. It's telling you as a tutor to come to an understanding to say, as you be teaching those students, you should be able to acknowledge the fact that learning is a process. It doesn't just take place right there and then. It's a process, meaning it takes time. It's the process whereby a student acquires knowledge, number one. So they're acquiring knowledge from you. What else? Skills. Last but not the least, values. And these things collectively, they will result in change in behavior. I'll give you an example. Before you were admitted in college, where you are right now, or university maybe. You are in university, maybe you are in third year. If you look at yourself, you have changed in behavior. The way you are behaving right now is not the way you were behaving when you were in grade 7 or grade 6. Why? Because you are learned, because you are educated. The knowledge that was impacted in you, the skills that were impacted in you, even the values resulted in the change in what behavior. Right now, you dress in a certain way, you look professional, you address things in a professional manner. Why? Because you are educated, because you are learned. So learning isn't just about transferring knowledge to a student. No, you also have to install the values in them. You also have to install the skills in them. That's the only way they can become completely educated or learned. For example, you've been able to come across such kind of a situation whereby when you go on the ward, or maybe you're being assessed by your examiner, you're performing a procedure on the ward, right? They will tell you to say, if, for example, you are performing a procedure of insertion of an NGT tube, right? So you have the knowledge about how to insert the nasogastric tube, right? But they always tell you to say you must grade the patient, okay? You must ask for permission, you must screen. So they just don't want you to have the knowledge about how to insert the nasogastric tube. No, they also want you to have the values of having to respect your client or having to respect your patient. So, like I have said, learning is just not about having to acquire knowledge and skills, but it's also you having to be able to acquire the values that will result in complete change in what? In behavior. We are also saying that this learning brings together cognitive, it has to do with knowledge, okay? It brings together cognitive, emotional, and environmental experiences, enhancing changes in one's knowledge, skills, values, and what? Worldviews. Right now, when you are educated, okay, you are learned, you will look at the world in a different way. The things you used to argue about, you no longer argue about them because you are educated, you are learned, you have the skills, you have the knowledge, you have the values. There are certain way you look at things. You've got a certain perspective in which you view things right now because you are educated. If you compare yourself to someone who is at grade 7, grade 10 level, you look at things a different way because your level of understanding, your level of knowledge, your level of values is no longer the same because you have got a high level of what? Education. So we're saying that learning brings together cognitive, emotional, and indeed environmental experiences in enhancing changes in one's knowledge, skills, values, as well as what? World views. Now, interestingly, let's move and also talk about the characteristics of learning. What is it that will be able to define a learning environment? What is it that will be able to say, actually, learning here is taking place, or how does it take place in short? So I've got these things that I'm showing you here, okay? These particular points. I've summarized them, but there are indeed notes in these particular slides that you can have reference that you can reference to. So one of the most important feature of learning, as you can see, there are 6 here. The first characteristic is that learning is unitary. What does it mean? The same way when we say as a nurse or as a midwife, as you are giving care to a patient, you do it in a holistic manner. You consider the spiritual perspective, okay? You consider the physical element, you consider the spiritual element, as well as the social element as you are giving care to that particular patient or client. So even learning is the same thing. When you are teaching a student, you must understand that they should learn as a whole, not just learning from the cognitive domain part without having to consider the physical part. For example, you cannot be teaching a student who is physically unstable. They are bleeding, you are teaching them. They can't learn from you. You can't teach a student who is spiritually unstable. Maybe they are crying, maybe they have been emotionally damaged. How can you teach them? So for a student to learn effectively from you, they must be considered as a whole. Everything must be present. Their cognitive domain or their psychological element, okay, their emotional element, their social element, their spiritual element. You do it as a whole, as you are teaching to them. Everything must be in place and in good form. So we're saying that for a student to learn, everything must be present. Physical element, psychological element, okay, emotional element, spiritual element. So we're saying that learning is unitary, meaning all these things must be present. The other feature of learning is that learning is individual. So you find that you may be teaching 100 students in a class, but all these students they've got a different pace in which they learn at. Some of them, they are fast learners. Some of them, they are slow learners. So as you are teaching them, you must keep in mind to say, I'm teaching these students about hypertension, yes, but they will not be able to understand the types of hypertension at the same time. Some of them will grasp what I'm teaching, you know, in a short period of time, others will not, because learning is individual. So if you are such a tutor who just wants to do what you're supposed to do, you teach and then you leave it there, and then you're expecting that your students have understood all of them, then you're not being fair. Because you must acknowledge that learning is individual. It takes place at a different pace. Even as I'm teaching you right now, I'm aware that there will be someone who's going to come and watch this video twice for them to understand. There will be someone who's just going to watch it once and then they'll get the concept. So learning is individual. Number 3 is that learning is self-active. Learning is what? Self-active. So for learning to take place, there must be a willful will from a student to be able to engage in learning. The same way you've decided to come to say, I want to watch this tutorial video about learning. You've been able to give yourself the will. Okay? When I was saying it's self-active, without that heartfelt will to learn, learning cannot take place. Sometimes we get to force students to do things they don't want to do in life. You want them to do engineering, but they don't have the will to do it. So it will affect their learning. You want them to do this particular program that they don't want to do. When they go to school, they'll be just performing average because they don't have the will to learn. Even in studying is the same thing. If you do not have the will to study, you will not be able to study. So for learning to take place effectively, there must be self-activeness from the student being engaged in learning on their own without you having to force them. So sometimes you find that as you are teaching, I'm telling you this because, like I said earlier, this particular topic is for those that are going for their teaching practice. Or indeed just tutors. If you are teaching students, you find that a student is not interested in your session, do not be such a one that will go directly into punishing them. Ask, what is it that is not making them to be self-activated or to be engaged in learning? When you find out, maybe they'll tell you to say, I didn't want to do this program, they forced me. I didn't want to be here, I wanted to do this, they forced me. So learning is self-active. Number 4, learning is what? Purposive. As you are teaching students, you must understand that you must attach a purpose to what they are learning. What do I mean? For example, you go in class, you are teaching students about glycolysis. Okay? And then you just enter class, you just start. Glycolysis is a metabolic pathway by which glucose is broken down into pyruvate. Okay? Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. After that, this pyruvate is going to be converted to acetyl. You have not attached any purpose to the session that you are teaching. You have to show students why they are learning about something. So, for example, you enter class, you are teaching about glycolysis, and then you reach, you start your presentation like this. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Chimfwembe, for example. I'll be taking you through in glycolysis. So glycolysis is a very fundamental metabolic pathway that involves the breakdown of glucose. Now, the reason why you're learning about this topic is that when you go to the word there are patients who have got what we call diabetes. And diabetes is directly related to glycolysis. Why? Because it has to do with the sugar levels in the blood. For example, when you get insulin, you give to a patient. All you do is that you promote glycolysis in them, because glycolysis brings about the reduction of blood glucose levels in the blood. Why? Because you break down the glucose, having to convert it to what? To pyruvate. Or in other ways, you can, by the use of that particular insulin, you can promote what we call glycogenesis, where excess glucose is converted into what? Into glycogen. By that, you are showing students why they are learning about something. They are attaching purpose. Even the time they will go to the clinical area there, they'll be able to tell, to say, actually, what this particular madam or sir was teaching me is now practical. But if you just go straight, you don't show purpose to what you are teaching, students will just be looking at you as if you are reading news or something. Some of them, they will sleep. Some of them, will just say, Madam, I'm asking, can I go outside? Because you've not showed them the purpose of what they're learning. So learning is purposive. Number This is number 5. So the fifth feature is that learning is transferable. What do I mean? What you learn in one context can be used in another context. You learned how to count in mathematics, primary school. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When you go to the word there, you are able to count patients. You are able to count drugs. You are able to do those mathematics that you learned in mathematics. But you are doing them in a different context. Why? Because learning is transferable. So when you teach, for example, you teach a student how to write a nursing care plan. If you use one problem, okay? If problem is difficulties in breathing, and then you show them the nursing care plan, it's like this. You expect the student to use the same principles to be able to come up with a nursing plan in another problem. It simply means that this student understands the fact that learning is transferable. What they learn in one context can be used in another context. So learning is transferable. Last but not the least, on the features, learning is creative. When a student learns something from you, they should be able to come up with their own meaning. They should be able to construct meaning on their own from what you are teaching them. Sometimes you find that you are teaching students and then you give them a test and then you ask them, for example, you ask them what is matter. You find that they'll give you a very good definition that they came up with on their own, from their own understanding. You even love the definition more than the one that you gave them because learning is creative. Students come up with their own meaning as they are learning. They'll be able, maybe some of them, as they are learning, maybe they will be drawing boxes to be able to remember things. Some of them, maybe they'll be using diagrams to remember things. As long as they are learning and coming up with their own meaning, then that is okay. So you should be able to appreciate the fact that learning is what? Creative. Summary, we've said learning is unitary, meaning that all the elements in a human being must be involved. The physical element, spiritual, social, as well as the spiritual element. We've said learning is individual. It takes place at a different pace in each student. Learning is self-active, as you can see. A student must give themselves a will to learn for learning to take place. Learning is purposive. We've said that you must show the purpose of what you are teaching to students. This one, do it very, very well, because as you be graded by your respective lecturers, you'll be able to catch their attention, you'll be able to impress them when you show the purpose of what you are teaching. Learning is transferable, as well as learning is what? Creative. Last but not the least, let's get to look at the principles of learning. Okay, so these are the notes for the things that I was explaining. If you want to look at them, you can see here, unitary, I've explained the notes. Learning is individual. We're saying each individual learns at his or her own pace. Okay, so you can look at this. Let me just move them slowly so that you're able to see the notes. Purposive, transferable, and creative. Any questions? If there are no questions, indeed, you don't have anything that is going in your mind, everything is clear, proceed and let's look at what we call the principles of learning. So learning doesn't just happen like I said. Even as I'm teaching right now, I'm considering certain things to be able to make you understand what I'm teaching. So as learners engage, they are not only they not only gain new knowledge but also learn how to learn. So developing systems of learning, it's like you are learning how to learn as you learn. So for learning to take place, there are principles that we follow to be able to facilitate learning. So the following are the principles of learning, okay, from constructive and learner-centered point of view. So these are the principles of learning that you are seeing here. Number 1, learning is an active process. As you can see, as I'm tutoring you right now or teaching you, I'm showing you slides. I'm able to speak loud enough so that you can hear me. It simply means that it's an active process. You have to involve the sensory senses. You have to involve the visual senses. You have to involve the auditory, senses. If indeed even the psychomotor senses. You have to be able to do that. So learning is an active process. You just can't be teaching students without them having to see what you are talking about, without them having to hear what you are talking about. So learning is an active process. Simply means you must involve the sensory, you must involve the senses of a student for them to learn. Show them a model of what you are talking about. Show them slides. Play a video for them. Okay? So that their senses are involved in learning and learning will be able to take place. Learning involves language. As you are teaching students, you have to be careful about the language that you are using. Because if the language that you are using is not something that they can understand, learning will not take place. You've heard in other countries, I'll not mention, to say they prefer teaching their students or teaching students in their native language because they understand better. Because learning involves language. If you can't understand English, you can't listen to what I'm telling you right now. You are only able to learn from me because you are able to understand my language, understand the language that I'm using. So learning involves the language. Do not, for example, those of you that will be going to teach to colleges, teaching diploma students, do not go with pathophysiologists that you learned at university. You want to teach them. No, they will not be able to get it because it's not at their level of understanding. So that kind of language that you'll be using, those terms that you'll be using will be big enough for them. You must find a way of narrowing down those things to a level that they can understand. So learning involves the language. Learning is a social activity. As you are teaching students, you get to interact with them. You just don't reach in class. You're not interested in like interacting with students. You just want to do your part and leave. No, that's not how we go about it. Learning is a social activity. There should be interaction between the teacher and the student. Okay? We are also saying that one needs the knowledge to learn. So for someone to learn, there is a reason why school starts from grade 1 up to grade 12, then it continues from there to tertiary school, of course. So they cannot teach you about the physiology of the renal system if you don't know, if you didn't do basic biology at grade 12. It doesn't make sense. Even for you to understand what I'm saying right now in an easy way, it's because you've been exposed to a certain level of education for you to learn. So one needs knowledge for them to learn. Before you do calculus, they first start with those things, primary school, 1 plus 1, you know. Division, you know. Subtraction, you know. Multiplication, you know. That's the only way they will introduce you to calculus. You can't just go direct. So somebody needs some prior knowledge for them to learn something. Even you, as you go for teaching practice, as you'll be teaching those students, if you are teaching them, for example, microbiology, okay? You're teaching them microbiology. The first time you enter class, try to go back to the things that the student learned recently. So you're like, okay, I'm aware that you just did your biology in grade 12 and you've come here, I'll be taking you in microbiology. You tell them to say, at secondary school level, you learn that biology is the study of life. But in college here or university, we're looking at microbiology. We've just added the word micro, meaning small. So in this particular context, we'll be studying the life of small living organisms that you cannot see by your naked eyes. You've been able to show that you've been able to use the knowledge that the student knows already in biology to connect them to what? To microbiology. So we're saying that one needs knowledge to what? To learn. Apart from that, number 5, it takes time to learn. That must be respected. It takes time to learn. It's not that when you teach students, they will grasp what you are telling them right there and then. Even me, I'm acknowledging the fact that as I'm, tutoring you right now, you'll not be able to get what I'm saying right there and then. You need some time maybe to go through, maybe even play the video again. So give your students at least some time for them to be able to sit down on their own and so that they can grasp the concept that you're teaching them. It's not that learning will just take place right there and then the way you want it to be. Those things that we do, you teach students in the morning, in the afternoon you want to give them a test on the same thing that you are teaching them because you don't have time. No, that's not fair. You have to appreciate the fact that it takes time to learn. Others will be able to learn at a faster rate because we've learned in this video to say learning is individual. But others will need time. They are slow learners. So learning takes time to happen. Last but not the least, motivation is a key component of learning. Motivation is a key component of learning. Even you, for you to come to this YouTube channel to be able to learn about this topic, there's something that is motivating you. Maybe you want to get that degree. Maybe you want to get that certificate. Maybe you want to do this. You want to try that. That motivated you to come and play the video. So even your student, sometimes when they don't pay attention in class, try to find out what is the problem. Don't just go and punish them directly. You must find out, why is my student not interested in learning? Some of them, they will tell you to say, there's nothing that motivates them to do the program that they're doing. There's nothing that is motivating them to learn about what you are teaching. But if you just be a one who is going to just punish students, you don't even know if they are motivated to learn or not. Sometimes if your student is failing repeatedly, do not rush into punishing them or into expelling them or just, forgetting about them. If you are a good tutor, ask them. Try to find out the motivational elements behind their school. What is it that is motivating them to learn? Once you do that, you will drive them in a good direction and they'll be able to understand things as you are teaching them. So this will be the end of the presentation or tutorial video on what? On learning. Ensure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel, especially, if you're such a one that is preparing for teaching practice, will be able to give you the much needed content and information that you need to be able to prepare for teaching practice. For today, we are going to end here. Until next time.